Supposedly, he had a great-grandfather who had stolen a pig from a one-legged gypsy. She put a curse on him and all his descendants. Stanley and his parents didn't believe the curse, of course, but whatever thing they want to wrong, it felt like to be able to blame someone. Things went wrong a lot. They always seemed to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He looked out the window and at the empty vast. He watched the rise and fall of the temperature wire. In the middle, he could barely see his grandfather's voice singing to him. If he only, the woodpecker's sight would break the trees just a bit softer, while the wind blows, hungry and lonely. He cries into the moon, only if only. It was a song his father used to sing to him. The melody of the sweet sand, but sadly, favorite parts was when his father would howl, the wind, the moon. The bus seemed to hit a bump, and the grandfather and the gardener seat stood up, standing alert. Stanley's father was interviewed to be a successful inventor. You see, three things: intelligent, perseverance, and just a little bit of bad luck. Stanley's father was a smart, and he had a lot of persistence. Once he started projecting, he would work on it for years, often going days while sleeping. He just never had any luck. Every time an experiment failed, Stanley could hear his dad cursing, his dirt rotten, pig-stealing great-grandfather. Stanley's father was also named Stanley Yelnats. Stanley's father's full name is Stanley Yelnats III. Our Stanley is Stanley Yelnats IV. Everyone in the family always had liked the fact that Stanley Yelnats was spelt the same font word, same as forward and backwards. The same keep naming their son Stanley. Stanley was an only child, and the only other Stanley Yelnats before him were for him. All have the same common spell. Desperately their awful luck. They remembered Hartful as Stanley's father liked to say, I learned from failure. But perhaps that was the part of the curse. If Stanley's father weren't always hopeful, then he wouldn't hurt so much every time he hopes he were cursed. Not even Stanley Yelnats has been a failure. Stanley's mother often pointed out whatever Stanley or his father may blame for discussion there actually started to become believed in the curse. The first Stanley Yelnats' great-grandfather had made a fortune in the stock market. He couldn't have been too unlucky. At such a time, she neglected the moment, the bad luck that befell. The first Stanley Yelnats, he had lots of entire fortune when he was moving from New York to California. His stagecoach was robbed by the outlaw Kissing Kate Barlow. If he wasn't for that, Stanley's family would be living in a mansion on the beach of California. Instead, they are living in a common tiny apartment in a small of a burned rubbled front door. Only if only the apartment smells the way because Stanley's father was trying to invent a way to recycle old sneakers. The first person who found a use for old sneakers, he said, will be a really rich man. If at least the project had led to Stanley's arrest, the bus ride became more intense and bumpy because the road was no longer paved. Actually, Stanley had been impressed by the first found of his first great-grandfather was robbed by Kissing Kate Barlow. The true he would had preferred living on the beach in California, but it will still kind of be cool to have something in your family's robbery by a famous outlaw. Kissing Kate Barlow didn't actually kiss Stanley's great-grandfather. That would have been really cold. But she only kisses the man she kills instead. Instead, she robbed him and left him to stand in the middle of the desert. He was lucky to survive. Stanley's mother was quick to point out. The bus slowed down. The guard and his stretched his arms out. Welcome to Camp Green Lake, said the driver. Stanley looked around out of the dirty window. He couldn't see a lake. Actually, hardly anything green. Okay. Stanley felt somewhat drowsy, dazed, as the guard unlocked his handcuffs and let him off the bus. He's been on the bus for over 8 hours. Be careful, the bus driver said as Stanley walked down the steps. Stanley wasn't sure if the bus driver meant for him to be careful or going down the stairs, or if he was telling him to be careful at Camp Green Lake. Thanks for the ride, he said. As his mouth was dry and his throat hurt, he stepped into a hard, dry dirt. There was a band of sweat around his wrist, where the handcuffs been. The land was barren and desolate. He could see a few rundown buildings and some tents. Further away, there was a cabin built with 2 tall trees. Those 2 tall trees were the only plants of life he could see. There weren't even weeds. The guard led Stanley to a small building. A sign on the front said you were entering Camp Green Lake Juvenile Facility. Next to the sign, which decided this was violating. The next to the sign said it is a violation of the Texas Penal Code to bring guns, explosive weapons, during drugs or alcohol into the premises. Stanley read the sign and couldn't help but thinking, well, duh. The guard led Stanley into a building where he felt welcomed relief of air conditioning. A man was sitting in the chair A man was standing with his feet up on a desk. He turned his head when Stanley and the guard entered. Otherwise, don't even move. Don't even think. He was inside. He wore sunglasses, a cowboy hat. He also had a can of soda straight on. He also had a can of soda. And he thought, in the sight of it, he made Stanley even more aware of his own honest thirst. He waited he wa- he waited a while. The bus guard given the man some papers to sign. "That's a lot of sunflower seeds, sir," the bus guard said. Stanley noticed the burlap sack filled with sunflower seeds of the floor on his desk. "I quit smoking last month," said the man in the cowboy hat. He had a tattoo of a rattlesnake on his arm, and as he signed his name, the rattlesnake seemed to wiggle. "Used to smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. Now I eat sunflower seeds. Now I eat a sack of sunflower seeds every week." The guard laughed. They must have been a small refrigerator behind his desk, because the man in the cowboy hat produced 2 more cans of soda. For Stanley, a second for Stanley. He hoped that one might be for him, but the man gave one to the guard and said the other was for the driver. 9 hours here and 9 hours back. The guard grumbled, "What a day." Stanley thought about the long, miserable bus ride. He felt a little sorry for the guard and the bus driver. The man in the cowboy hat said, "Split sunflower seed shells into a wastebasket." Then he walked around the desk. "Stanley, my name is Mr. Sir," he said. Whenever you speak to me, you call me Mr. Whenever you speak to me, you call me by my name. Is that clear?" Stanley. "Yes, Mr. Sir. Yes, Mr. Sir." He said, "I thought he couldn't imagine that was really the man's name. You are not a Girl Scout anymore," said Mr. Sir. Stanley moved his clothes in front of Mr. Sir, who made sure he wasn't hiding anything. He was then given 2 sets of clothes and a towel. Each set of clothes was long-sleeve orange jumpsuit, an orange t-shirt, and yellow socks. Stanley laid wasn't true if the socks had to be yellow originally. He was also given white sneakers, an orange cap, and canteen made heavy plastic, which unfortunately was empty. The cap had a piece of cloth sewed on the back of it. Then it for a neck position. Stanley got dressed. Then the clothes smelled like soap. Mr. Sir told him he should wear one set of work clothes in the Mr. Sir told him should wear one set of clothes to work and one set for relaxing. Laundry was done every 3 days on the day his work clothes would be washed. Then the other set would become his work clothes. Then he would get clean clothes to wear while resting. You are to dig 1 hole each day, including Saturday and Sunday. Each hole must be 5 feet deep and 5 feet across. In every dimension, your shovel is your measuring stick. Breakfast is at 4:30. Stanley must have looked surprised because Mr. Sir went no exception that starting early to avoid a hottest part of the day. "No one is going to babysit you," he added. The longer it takes you to dig a hole, the longer you'll be out there. The sun. If you dig up anything interesting, you'll be you are to report it to me or any other counselor when you are finished. The rest of your day. When you're finished, the rest of the day is yours. Synod. To understand, that isn't a Girl Scout camp, Mr. Sir said. He crackled to Stanley. Backpack allowed him to keep, then led Stanley outside into the blazing heat. Take a good look around, Stanley. Take a good look around. Take a good look around, Mr. Sir said. What do you see? Stanley looked across the wasteland. The air seemed hot, heat, and not much, he said. Not much, he said. Then Stanley added, Mr. Sir. Mr. Sir laughed. You see any guard towers? No. How about any electric fences? No, Mr. Sir. There are no fences at all. No, Mr. Sir. You want to run away? Run. Mr. Sir asked him. Stanley looked around. Stanley looked back at him. Unless you want to be meat, you won't run away. Go. You want to go away? Go ahead. Start running. I'm not going to stop you. Stanley didn't know what kind of game Mr. Sir was playing. I see you looking at my gun. Don't worry. I only going to see. I'm not gonna. Is this some kind of game Mr. Sir was playing? I see you're looking at my gun. Don't worry. I'm not going to shoot you. He tapped his holster. This is for yellow spotted lizards. I won't waste a bullet on you. Wait. I am not going to run away, Stanley said. Good thinking, Mr. Sturson. Nobody runs away here. We don't need a fence. Know why? Because we got the only water for 100 miles. You want to run away? You'll be food for the buzzards in 3 days. Stanley couldn't see some kids desolate in orange and carrying shovels digging themselves towards the tent. You thirsty? asked Mr. Sir. Yes, Mr. Sir. Stanley as gratefully. Well, you better get used to it. You're going to be thirsty for the next 18 months. There were 6 large tents. Each one had a black letter on it. A, B, C, D, E, or F. The first 5 tents were the campers. The counselors slept in F. Stanley was assigned to D tent. Mr. Podolsky was the head counselor. My name is easy to remember, said Podolsky. He shook his hand. Stanley, you might be outside of. Just stand. It's outside the tent, but there are 3 easy words: pen, key, dance. Okay. Mr. Sir returned to his office. Mr. Podolsky was a younger than Mr. Sir, and he nearly and scary looked at the top of his head was shaved so close that you could almost see his face covered with thick black beard. His nose was belly sanded. Mr. Sir isn't really bad, Mr. Podolsky said. He's just been in a bad mood since he quit smoking. The person you've got to worry about is the warden. There's really one rule at Camp Green Lake. Don't upset the warden. Stanley nodded as if he understood what. No, so I understand you, Stanley. Don't that I respect you, Mr. Podolsky said. I understand you made some bad mistake in your life. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But everyone makes mistakes. You may have done some bad things, but that doesn't make you mean that you're a bad kid. Stanley nodded. It seems pointing to try to tell his counselors that in inconvenience fighting that everyone probably said that. He doesn't want Mr. Panowski to think he had a bad attitude. I'm going to help you turn your life around, said the counselor, but you're going to have to help you too. I can't help you. Yes, sir, Stanley said. Mr. Panowski said, good. The apparently Stanley is on the back. Tap Stanley in the back. Two boys each carry a shovel. We're coming across two compounds. Mr. Panowski called them Rex, Alan, and I want you to... Rex and Alan went to come say hello to Stanley. He's the newest member of your team. The boys gallantly where'd Stanley. They were dripping in sweat and their faces were dirty. That Stanley, at the moment, noticed that one of the kids was white, the other one was black. What happened to Barf Bag? Asked the black kid. Lewis is still in the hospital. Mr. Panowski said he won't be returning. He told the boys this. He told the boys that come Snake, Stanley had one ignorance thieves, like he's a gentleman. Hi. The white kid greeted him. This is Alan, said Mr. Panowski. My name is not Alan, the boy said. It's Squirrel, and that's X-Ray. X-Ray said hi, smiled, and shook Stanley. Smiled, shook off. Stanley had his glass. X-Ray said, smiled, shook Stanley's hand. He wore his glasses like they were dirty. Stanley wore scared. How could you see out of those things? Mr. Panowski told Alan to go to the rec hall and bring the other boys to meet Stanley. Then lead them inside to the tent where there are 7 cots, each less than 2 feet from each other from the next one. Which one was Lewis' cot? Mr. Barbeck slept there, said X-Ray, kicking at the one of the beds. All right, Stanley, that's yours. Mr. Panowski. Stanley looked at his cot and nodded. He wasn't particularly useful, thrilling about sleeping in the same cot that had been someone's used to be named Barf Bag. 7 cots were stacked on 2 piles on either side the tent. The opened end of the cots were out first. Stanley put his backpack and changed the clothes and a towel in his to be Barf Bag's cot. It was on the bottom, stacked on, had to stick Barf Bag's kite. It was the bottom of the stack, and it had 3 in it. Squirrel remained the fourth. 4 of our boys, the first 3 inconveniently were Mr. Panowski as Joseph, Theodore, and Ricky called themselves Magnet, Atman, and Ziggy. They all had nicknames except Mr. Pinnacle. However, I prefer their parents' given names. Their names society will recognize them by when they return, becoming useful, hard workers, and members of society. Did I accidentally put my... No, it doesn't matter. Isn't it just a nickname? X-Ray told Mr. Penis he trims those rims of his glasses. I can't see anything, Mom. You've got a big heart. The boys at least either don't have real names or else they don't have a nickname. both Mr. Penowski actually called him Zero. You know why his name is Zero? Asked Mr. Because there's nothing inside his head. He smiled playfully, and shook Zero's shoulder. Zero said nothing, and his mom, as that's Mom's voice, and said, Mr. Penowski smiled. If it makes you feel better to call me Mom, Theodore goes ahead and call me Mom. He's just he can turn Stanley. If you have any questions, Theodore will help you. You got that, Theodore? It depends on Theodore's spirit, thin line of sight between his teeth. Some other boys to the camp needs to keep their homes sanitary. You will only you were all new here once, said Mr. And all you know is what happens. It feels like I'm counting on every one of you to help Stanley. Stanley looks at the ground. Mr. Penowski said, left the tent, and soon the other boys began filling out what to talk about. Their towels, change of clothes, what with them. Stanley was received to be left alone, but he was so thirsty he felt he would die if he didn't get something to drink soon. Hey, Theodore, he said, I'm going to after him. Do you know where to fill my canteen? Yuck, it stinks. Theodore grabbed his whirl and grabbed him. Stanley, by the car. My name is not Theodore, he said. It's Armpit. Theodore stood thrown to the ground. Stanley stared up terrified of him. There's a water spigot over there by the showers. Thanks, Armpit, Stanley said. He watched the boy turn around and walked away. He couldn't lift a finger without anyone wanting to call him Armpit. In the way, it made him feel a little better about having slept on a cot that was used by someone named Barfbag. Maybe this is some type of respect?